unit open to see what's going on. Let me just make sure that's muted. All right, we're now live on YouTube. Let's see. Is that your music or mine? Oh, whoa, I got, hold on. Wait a minute, dude. Copyright infringement right off the bat. All right, whoa, it's the illusion and my friend Jordan, and we're here to try to get something new going. We're going to do a show where it's two dads talking about navigating through life as two dads. So why don't you, my people kind of know who I am. So why don't you're a reoccurring character, but why don't you introduce yourself and give yourself some information and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, my name is Jordan Richter, and many people know me as a skateboarder. From the skateboard industry, I've been involved in that world for about 35 years. And I reside in the Bay Area. I'm originally from Miami, Florida. I'm a father of 4 children. I'm married, and I still skateboard. I run a little perfume business, and just dealing with the same challenges as every other father every day, and raising children and trying to guard them and protect them from some of the challenges that are out there, especially currently. And so, I think we connected a few years back, like 6-7 years ago. And stuff might come up a little bit more about me later on, but that's the gist of it.
Well, okay. So Jordan and I, we've been talking about doing this for a little while here. And what we wanted to do was, we figured we're not the only dads out there trying to navigate this new world we live in, or this new terrain, or whatever it is that we're living in. And the common bond Jordan and I share is we're skateboarders and we're fathers, but we live in worlds that are unified, but two totally different worlds. You're Muslim and I'm a Christian, and we have two different perspectives of how we navigate our journey through this world as towards God, and we deal with the same stuff. And maybe give yourself a little so people know sort of your dad stats, if you will. So I'll give mine just for those who aren't aware, because we're kind of balls. We're probably going to get a new crowd here. Is I'm a father and a husband. I have a 6-year-old boy, as well as my daughter, who's my 16-year-old stepdaughter. So I have a 10-year gap on the 2 children, and I get a unique perspective in that. And you have your own setup. So what's your setup?
Yeah. One second. The boss just entered the arena. So I'm a father of 4. Got my oldest is 12. I've got 2 boys, 2 girls, and a 12-year-old, 7-year-old boy, and 2 younger girls, 4 and 2. I've how do you say, this all the challenges that come along with that. The age difference is not too bad as you get my wife's already smirking at me. She's like, what the hell are you talking about? I run the house. Which is the funny, misconception of Muslim, men through the media, is that they're made to believe people are made to believe that the Muslim man is, locking the woman in the house and she has no say. And actually, my wife pretty much runs the show for the most part. Not really, but yeah, that's I've got my 12-year-old is from previous marriage, and I've got my three that 3 that I have. So it's a lot. It's a lot to manage. Just things that a single people or even people that have one child would somewhat be relatively easy becomes more and more complex when you have the more heads you have in the house. So you really have to be really patient, and you have to listen to everyone and their needs. And as a Muslim, that
family, it's number one is God, and after that is family, and both are obviously interconnected. So we try to bring that in our family and try to have inculcate those values in our from the youngest to the oldest. So and it's beautiful. I call it beautiful chaos. Having a lot of children is a beautiful thing.
Well, that's sort of you realize how that brings it all together, right? I couldn't imagine life without children, and yet I lived 45 years fully thinking that, not even knowing what it was that was awaiting me, and what a gift it's been.
Absolutely.
So you have I didn't know that your oldest is from a previous wife.
Yeah, but he's with me, so I have full custody.
So your wife gets the experience of having the child that is a unique station. You know what I mean? But as part of the family.
Exactly. Yeah, it comes with its own set of real challenges.
Boy, does it. Let me tell you. And it's interesting, as from my perspective, love isn't the hard part. It's everything because of the love that makes it very difficult. I think sometimes it would almost, as a step parent who it is my child, it seems like it would almost be easier if you were disinterested, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because then you could just be like, yeah, whatever. But it's not the case.
Yeah, unless you're a sociopath, it's very difficult to do that. Yeah, I think anyone with a heart and a mind, and specifically a heart and a conscience, any child under your roof is your responsibility.
Well, yeah, it's funny because I had one of those interfaces this week, which was explaining where I was coming from about certain boundaries, and they weren't coming from anything but love. And the fact that I was there holding the boundaries was because it would be easier not to have to hold the boundary, right? But because there's value and care and concern and love in that, you have to hold the boundary, even though you're heading into a world of hurt on it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, which is I think why this conversation is so important, because the people aren't, how do you put it, like living a life of where you set boundaries. Obviously children can grow to understand boundaries, and you can train them and discipline them, but it's crazy because you'll see other parents and you'll see other people in general, like when you're trying to really live a life of values, and you have your principles and you have your boundaries and you have your limits, that sometimes is looked at as something strange. In many cases, it looked at something strange as something strange to the majority
of other parents out there because of what they're being fed by the mainstream media as what is acceptable and what is not. I think that's where like unraveling all that is where it becomes a day-to-day challenge, you know, especially translating those things to your child, you know, like what, in other words, like what your child learns in school, sometimes you have to undo that as soon as they get in home from school. It's like, yeah, we learned about whatever dinosaurs today, and I'm like, you know, and I've got to like undo that. Or we learned about this specific thing today, and you got to undo it. So it's interesting, you know, that those, when, you know, those daily challenges that are there.
Well, so I mean, so there you go. There's another in two different data points that we're exchanging here. So again, just to kind of refresh for those who are turning in, especially the my regular viewers and stuff, like our goal here is Jordan and I are both, we dig into the shadows of the cave wall. We are definitely exploring what is the reality we're living in, and we're two people that by the nature of our realities, we're grounded as parents. Like, you can only really, you know, how far do you dig? You know, we've had a number of interesting conversations over the last month about, like, you know, putting the digging down to just focus in on growing the children. And then sometimes we pop back in and you know, you find all sorts of information that's coming at your children that is the same stuff you were trying not to dig into, but it's percolating up through the tentacles of the outside world, right? It's like, for example, tonight Al was out there with his dinosaurs, and he was playing, and he was like, well, these ones are all getting killed over here. And I was like, why are you on the kill program with the dinosaurs? Why not some sort of life vibe, you know, flipping the script on, like, and he's like, well, because, and I was like, well, why because? And he was like, because I was over at my friend's house watching something, and they were killing each other. And so I'm very, as a parent, very much opposed to screens and video games and all of this kind of stuff. And I go over to a friend of mine's house who has a similar age child, and they're very, very much about the food issues, but not so much about the screen issues. Mm-hmm. So when I go over there, I know that's part of where I have to let go as a parent and be like, okay, he's going to go and hang out and do whatever with his friend. And I always at first be like, and then I go, you know what? Like, that's where they're going to do their experience another world. Can't be the forbidden fruit. I'm not here to micromanage someone else's life. But it was funny because it came home into the, like, 20 minutes before we started this. I was like, why is this thing about killing the other dinosaurs? And it's because they were playing some sort of game where the dinosaurs were killing each other. And I remember being over at the house the other day and being like, but where do you come in and be like, I don't want them watching that and blah, blah, blah. And then be like, you know, because then when he comes over to my house, right, we're a little bit looser about the food stuff, right? Where that parent would be like, has to kind of let that one go a little bit and be like, because we're all doing the best we can to stay in the being awake vibe, right? Because they're fully awake, they're on the same page as we are. But like, when it comes down, how many pillars can you hang on to hold up the roof of this lives we're living right now? Very tricky.
There's a time and a place for it all. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that I let slide and let go because I know that it's a part of childhood, and it's a part of, you know, what I did and what I went through and what I experienced as a kid, you know. So I definitely don't think micromanaging is the best route to take for sure. So you've got to
No, well,
let them evolve and guide them along the way. You know, it's wisdom. You have to have that kind of, not saying you in particular, in general, I have to remind myself that you know, to just put the seeds there, you know, and make the suggestions without stripping away, you know, all the things that he's fond of. You know, otherwise the child will grow to hate you and resent you. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. So and kind of for those of you guys out here, we're looking to do this. This is our time. We're
warming up.
Yeah, this is our inaugural thing. We're not too set on the name yet. I just threw that up as Two Dads, Lots of Wheels.
Maybe get some suggestions from your audience.
Yeah, the audience wants to throw up some name suggestions for the show. We're gladly accepting that. And our goal is to be here at 6 o'clock on Sundays. And I have another email I will plug into this thing so we can kind of corral that to there for people, because we'll find that people have some pretty like relevant things they'll want to come to the surface, and we're open to, we're open to taking questions and exploring what it is for other people too. It's
absolutely, I think that'd be great,
because I don't find, especially for a person who's trying to understand the shadows on the cave wall, I don't find a lot of this content of like real life interaction where the rubber meets the road. It's pretty easy to sit and talk about all this stuff, but then at 7 o'clock, I got to go walk into the kitchen and start making dinner, regardless of what the shadows on the wall are doing. And it's the same for you. I know that parenting overrides this quest to know what is going on in our reality.
Absolutely.
So we're here for y'all. And
so as the sort of inaugural warm up, what do you think? Like, is there one thing that piques your interest or in your mind?
Well, for me on this one, I think it was just to sort of introduce ourselves and say, hey, we're going to be here at Sundays at 6 o'clock, and put it out there to other parents. And I think we talked, so for those of you out there, we did a trial run last night for about two and a half hours. And Jordan and I are pretty loose, so to speak, with our perceptions and being willing to explore our perceptions. And I think that for some people that might rub them the wrong way. And so we're not afraid to take the challenge. But what ultimately started this was you and I are in agreement about the subversion of the skateboarding culture. That there's something amiss in the skateboarding culture that we saw rear its ugly head in the Olympics. And I don't know if we need to get into that too much here on this one, but we realized that there is a battle within the skateboarding world, not for us as adult skateboarders, but for our children as skateboarders, and the culture that they're building around skateboarding with these institutionalized skate parks, if you will, which I think is interesting because you teach a skating school, right? And I'm a huge advocate for building skate parks, but yet both of these things we're realizing now are being piggybacked to take advantage of these young children. And I think we're both concerned at where this is going. And so we just so you guys know, in our stream last night, we inadvertently dug into some deep, dark stuff in the world of skateboarding. Neither of us knew was there. And it was pretty divine intervention to stumble onto this stuff. So I think the next one we're going to kind of come at it a little bit hard in the paint about skateboarding, so to speak. Right? I mean,
yeah, I think that's, yeah, that was I was smirking because I was just thinking about like those, yeah, I was thinking about last night and how just, yeah, well, we could save all that, but yeah, just.
Yeah. Well, well, again, it's
very surreal. For sure.
Well, that is where we kind of agreed that this could be of service is, you know, I grew up for me on skateboarding. Skateboarding was this. Maybe we'll do this. Let's share our skateboarding, where we came from, stories today, because so that people can know. Because, you know, for me, I lived up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, right? And I remember when I was a little kid, my dad got me like a blue plastic skateboard, what would be the penny skateboards now, whatever. I lived up in the mountains. Wasn't that big of an issue. I remember in junior high, everybody, the junior high class, what would that be? 8th grade, all graduated, and everybody on the last day of school all showed up with like Sims E's of some sort of various shape. Like all the kids showed up with brand new skates. And I remember being like, whoa. And then I started my freshman year of high school, and I lived way in the boonies, like way in the mountains. And so I had to take, in order to get to and from school, I used to get dropped off at a bus and take not a public bus to school, but a transit bus out of the Santa Cruz Mountains from the summit down to Los Gatos High, and then reverse thing. But I didn't have a ride in the evening. So I would get dropped off at this bus, and it was roughly like 3 or 4 miles from home, but there were hills. That is where skateboarding became like a tool for me, because I was like, I'll use the skateboard.
What year was that when you first?
This would have been 1980. I graduated in 87, so 82, 83 in there somewhere. Like when I was a kid, do you remember Pegasus skateboards?
Absolutely.
Pegasus was big, dude. And so I come from that sort of crowd. And I remember that skateboarding for me wasn't some activity. It was strictly a device to get me home in the evening. And then at some point it developed a weird I remember at this kid Steve Cry's ramp. I remember the first time I dropped in. I remember all of that stuff. And then from there, it just became part of my life, like an appendage. Nothing I was like, you see these kids now, right? They're skate all the time. I was a surfer kid. Like skate. It wasn't that. It was always something I was into, but it was just part of my world. It was nothing special about it. Like it was just this device I used. And then you move through time and space, and it's been my, it's been my life raft, really, and my transportation and all of that stuff. And here we are. But I come from that sort of early 80s school of skateboarding. We don't know what it was. It was just this device.
Yeah, I mean, it was whatever you made it at the time with your friends, and it was all improvisational, I think, for the most part. No one really knew except what you saw in the videos. And even that was so out of reach. It's funny though, my first sponsor was Santa Cruz Skateboards.
Where did you grow up skateboarding?
So when I moved out from Miami, Florida to San Diego, to La Jolla, University City in particular. It was interesting. I lived on the University City side, and Peter Hewitt lived on the Claremont. Or I lived on the La Jolla side, and Peter Hewitt lived on the University City side of the canyon. So I lived here, and Peter lived here, and we met in the canyon on the canyon ramp. I started in '84 skateboarding, and I got my first skateboard, which was a GNS bob wire, had like a bob wire and like a dog on it. And my mom got it for me. Part of my reason for skateboarding, I think, was I was desperately looking for something to escape the trauma that I was experiencing at home. I would walk to school, and I was kind of a latchkey kid. My mom was heavily addicted to pharmaceuticals and drugs, and she came from Miami, so she got whiff of the whole crack and cocaine era. So we came from like, we actually moved out to California to get her away from that. Moved away from Miami, but when we got to California, it just, those sort of, the habit was still sustained. And I just took up skateboarding, and that was the way that I would cope. I built my own ramps. I became a local at Del Mar Skate Ranch in 1984 to 87 until it closed. And that was what kind of, I mean, it was weird because I probably skated every day the time since I started for like, until like from 10 to like 15. Hey, Owl, how are you, buddy? Good to see you.
You wanted to come say hi. Well, this is what it's all about.
Good
The
to see
children
you,
will
buddy.
visit.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. Nice.
So your first buddy there was Peter Hewitt.
Peter Hewitt was me and Peter were like, that was my first like skate buddy. Actually, I met his brother. So it's weird. The first guy I met was named George Medlock. And George had a skateboard shop in his garage. And George is who got me into skateboarding. It was weird because he was older. He was an older guy, but he would take me to all the ditches, and he was the one who took me to Del Mar Skate Park, and he kind of mentored me. And but Peter was my first like friend who skated as a child. We were both 10, 11 years old. And Peter had a vert half pipe in his driveway. It was like 8 feet wide and 6 feet high. Went to vert, and he was doing frontside 540s out of it without it, just units, but he wouldn't put his hand down frontside fives. And then I was just, he was always good. And from that time he was gnarly.
Peter's the gnarliest. Well, that was what we were talking about the other day when you look at the roster for the Olympics, like what great skaters we have and what great skaters we didn't send.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a conversation for sure, because there's a lot going on there, a lot to get into for sure. But yeah, no, I grew up in San Diego, lived there for like 25 years, and I turned pro when I was 16 for blind skateboards. And it was weird. As soon as I turned pro, I don't know, I've always been a feeler, I guess if you want to call it that. I don't know if that's the right word, but I've always had a really strong intuition about things. And I probably got a dislike for skateboarding like professionally shortly after I turned pro. I was living with Danny Way, and I was hanging out with Josh Swindell, and I lived with Jason Lee for a while, and hanging out with Mark Gonzalez and all these guys. And one thing that was kind of a pattern I saw was that a lot of these guys were not very nice people, and I don't say that as from any other perspective, just as an observer, as someone who was going through it. Like, it wasn't a very like nice environment. It was, it was just basically like skateboarding and performing and videoing and then joking and cynicism. And that was pretty much about it. Partying, And so the substance, I got disenchanted with not having that substance. And my grandmother was always talking to me about spirituality and different things. And so long story short, I checked out of skateboarding when I was I went through some major depression, and I'm just trying to figure it all out, and parents were going through their thing. But I think by the age of 18, 19, I had really kind of checked out, and then I wouldn't return back to skateboarding until 22, 23 years old. And so I had a weird relationship with skateboarding, and it's someone in the chat says he thinks Jason Lee's a chill dude. He's definitely a chill dude. I just think it's that was a time back then though that was a lot different than how we are now. That was 35. It was 30 years ago, so it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's well, that's what's so interesting as being on. It's funny. I was skating the other day, and I don't know. I felt like there was like a certain. I was stoked because I was like the dad who was skating, right? Yes, Bird.
This thing killed the thing that was supposed to kill him.
Really?
Yeah, it killed.
Okay.
Yeah.
See?
I see that. No worries.
It's all about dinosaur life and death, right?
How old is he now? 6?
He's 6.
Oh yeah, that's totally normal.
Well, that was when we were kind of doing our. Yeah, it's totally normal. But when we first met, I was the childless guy. Because we first met down at Venice one day. It was one of those days.
Yep.
We were skating, but I think about the transformation from when I first met you to here, of like what a journey to go from just the YouTube guy to a dad with the skateboard. You know what I mean? Like it's funny because I don't even push. I don't have any push on him with the skateboard. How is it with your children and the skateboard?
My 12-year-old wants to do the whole thing. He wants to tour and go to contests, and he's like super hyped. He loves it. He's a good skateboarder. My 7-year-old is into like gymnastics and parkour and boxing, and my 12-year-old he's into motocross and skateboarding. Kind of funny because that was like kind of has a lot of the same genetics as like some of the guys I grew up with, just as far as that whole thing. And my 7-year-old, he's into skateboarding a little bit, but he's more into like gymnastics and flipping around and boxing and such. But he skates a little bit. My girls are, they're girls, so they're still young. But I don't push it. My 12-year-old happened because of him just being with me a lot. He just took to it, and a lot of his friends skate, and so it just kind of locked him in because of his friends, and he does genuinely love it. It's a beautiful thing to not make any real suggestions and let them sort of find it themselves, and that's unintentionally that happened. I didn't really like try to get him into it. He just was into it.
Well, I know that's what I think so generationally interesting about the skating thing is like there was zero influence on how it entered my life. Like in that sense of there was no parents, there was no skate park, there was no big push about it. Like I don't think my parents have ever like seen me skateboard. Like you know what I mean? Like I remember when I must have been in my early 20s. I flew to meet my dad somewhere, and skateboarder, never leave home without it. And I remember I met him at the airport wherever we were going, and he's like, "Do you take that thing with you everywhere you go?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally. Of course I do." But just that weird. It's such an interesting time for skateboarding because it's so spoon fed right now. Like I bump into a lot of these kids. They have no idea what it is to nail a bunch of sticks together in their driveway and skate it. Like I think about it when I was living in the Santa Cruz Mountains. I built this ramp out of like wood from under the house that was so hinky and hoopty. And I wish I had a picture of it, because it must have just been little squares of wood. It was so dangerous and nail ridden. And I had it set up where you'd had to like come down to the driveway and get on it. And it was just this hazard in the driveway. And I just spent hours out there riding this thing. And there seems to be like the component of that that's not present. You know what I mean? That sort of driveway madness anymore. It's just go to the skate park and ride around in circles.
You think about the videos back in the day, they had a storyline. I think Stacy Peralta did a phenomenal job in capturing some of what skateboarding truly felt like. You know, the idea of like when Lance Mountain goes out of the house with a banana and he's just cruising down around the street doing nothing that's hard per se, but it was 7-8 minutes of, or however long it was, of very entertaining stuff, because it resonated with us all, because we knew we could do that too. We could go out and we could journey and we could explore. I think that aspect for us, even though we went to skate parks, and I was a local at a skate park, still street exploring the streets and cruising around and slappies and just going out and the exploration of it all. That was where you got like the sort of the essence and some of the culture, all that came through that exploration. But when you went to the skate park, that's where like the contests, and that's where the friendships were solidified, but the culture was really out in, without sounding corny, the culture was out in sort of exploring the streets. And even though that was in the park, it was just different because it was a controlled environment, and there was more rules back then. There was more, you had admission fees, and you had stickers you had to keep on your helmet to let the park manager know that you paid your way. And, so it wasn't so free flowing as, but yeah, I just thinking back, like I think that was what it was for me. Was a lot of it was that exploration, a lot of that video stuff. Yeah. Like Powell, or like New York City, and all these different, like the chin ramp was a little later. Yeah. But all that I think was, and then Rocco and Mike Tronansky started producing videos where there wasn't much culture in those videos at all. There was just, I don't want to say this out of like any like slam on them or whatever, but it was very much about the what you could achieve on your skateboard as far as tricks are concerned. And then that was the thing, like showcased. The culture then took a backseat, and that was really probably one of the major turning points. There was still culture was there, but that, like the Rocco World and Plan B era, was where a lot of the deeper sort of cultural Venice, Powell sort of elements were starting to become less attractive, not to the people who are experiencing it, but to the buyer, to the end consumer, if you will.
Yeah. No, that's what I find so kind of interesting about, like, that is the weird thing. Cause I remember like my first skater buddy was this dude, Brian Volpe. And it was a lot of us just cruising around with just cruising around. There was no, like, that's what I mean, is skating's become like a trick thing versus like it was this thing that was part of our life. There was no, it's very interesting to watch that shift going on. Cause I was at the little local skate park here, and it's so focused on this trick thing versus like it seemed to, it does seem like what you were saying is it was lifestyle. You went to the park, and now and then back into the lifestyle. And now it just seems to be very park centric, if you will.
I mean, I would spend hours on tricks. Don't get me wrong. I would spend literally weeks and months trying to land.
Sure.
But the difference is that we were finding our happiness, and our sort of our getaway, if you will, was in the exploration part, was just, going and just getting lost, without a video camera,
Sure. Well, it's like
you don't need a camera every time,
Well, exactly. It wasn't the trick with like learning to skating and doing the tricks were all like in it, but that wasn't the goal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I remember, the same thing. You would sit for hours and hours, but there was no end goal in it except that's what you were doing. I guess that's what I mean. It's like when we used to go over to this dude, Steve Cry was the first ramp I ever remember skating. I remember it had parking. Dude, these guys had the Cry brothers, dude, up in Los Gatos, had this ramp in their backyard. First one I ever dropped in on. It was very in the now, I guess is what there was no end goal of like why we were doing what we were doing. We were just straight up skateboarding. Yeah. Like, it seems like I see a little bit of, maybe that's what we're kind of talking about, is with the skateboarding culture's inserted this thing that's not in the now of skateboarding, that there's some sort of end goal to skateboarding. Like, it's very, you see people get burned out on it and all this stuff. Like, I never have ever been burned out on my skateboard. Like, it's because it's never had any goal in it. It's literally been a goalless activity. Because it just provides me with.
Yeah. It was weird. Like, something comes to my mind when you're talking. I'm thinking about like Neil Blender and a lot of these guys who would go to street contests and just totally dork off.
Yeah.
Like there's a spirit of like self-deprecation amongst a lot of professional skateboarders, where they were not they didn't take themselves very seriously. You know what I mean? They were like joking, and they were gnarly and very talented. But when it came to attention, they were very turned off by the attention. They were not narcissistic. They were turned away from the attention seeking. And I think with the advent of like social media and Instagram and YouTube and all this, thing where anyone can put together a part, so to say, and upload it for the world to see, that changed the whole sort of MO of a lot of people dramatically, where it none shifted from this self-deprecated temperament and like I'm not that good or whatever, even though they were rad, but they weren't like full of themselves. There was exceptions like Christian Asoy and maybe Gator. There was guys that were pretty like always pretty grandiose in their thinking about themselves. But I remember that distinctly. Like, that shifted a lot with the probably like around more. I mean, it changed before social media, but it really just finished it all. So now it's like this very like any kid can put together a part and upload it. And if that child has done tricks that, say, Tony Hawk can't do, then it might be in his mind that, that he's somewhat accomplished or better than, so to say, his favorite hero, because now he can, you know what I mean? So it's a very interesting thing, because like the baseline of skating nowadays is so gnarly. Like, everybody skates good. Like, realistically, like, people are gnarly, dude. Like, I just go down to, Absolutely. Like, it's always cool to be like in kind of like the Venice skate scene now is alive and well again. But it's like the amount of like good young skaters, they're all gnarly.
it's very interesting to watch I think it goes back to our thing. It's like, how did, like, the ones that are out there to skate, and the ones that were that it's a very trippy thing. So I was skating with that what's that kid the other day? We were skating some pools, dude, with Jesse. You know Jesse? Beanwater One, dude. What is Jesse's full? What is Jesse's? Jesse, man, he's the gnarliest, dude. Like, so I was skating with this dude, and he gets what we're talking about with the industry, because we were talking about, he's like a new hot, he's like the guy, dude. What is Jesse's last? Is it? Yeah, Jesse Lindoff. You seen Jesse Lindoff skate?
I'm not familiar. No.
He's pretty next level gnarly, dude. And but we were talking about, because I was like, boom, talking about it, and he was like very aware of the parasitic nature of the industry now. Where it does seem like a certain level of like the record industry of like, let's bag and tag these skaters to just sort of shelve them out of.
Yeah, dude. I think what happens when I look at it all, I can't help but to think about, like, the only thing that comes to my mind, and it's just terrible to say, is just like a little monkey with those cymbals, with the little ching 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 in the circus. I just think of like a circus monkey, and in the sense, not taken away from the talent and the enjoyment of watching someone like skate is amazing. But I'm saying, in the perspective from the industry standpoint, in how they use these kids, is just mind blowing that they can get away with this. Like, they could basically take someone, a new kid who shows up at the park, and they literally can film him for 3 hours and get the gnarliest footage, toss him a couple boards, and use that footage now and spread it all over the world to enhance the brand image and enhance the brand worth of their company without even giving that kid anything, maybe $50 worth of product. And that goes on over and over and over again across the board. And I think that has there's no checks and balances for that. And regardless of what people say, there's no checks and balances. Like, so kids want to make a name for themselves, and they're gnarly, and rightfully so. Like, they love skateboarding, and no one can take that away from them. But the fact that there is someone out there who has a company who looks for that and preys upon those kids, and really utilizes their name and their abilities to basically enhance their own brand image, which is unheard of, in most industries. You can't do that.
Well, I think that was what kind of got us rolling on this, because we were stumbling into some of those meetings where we're watching these NGOs, and for people who don't know, non-government organizations, and these foundations and stuff that are literally using this mass of skateboarding youth to form organizations to get money from government and other foundations to basically launch
NGOs that are aligned with governments.
It's to pay for their own bills. It's as a person who works in, we've both, again, one of the things that we have common is we've both gotten into the infrastructure of a municipality for our skateboarding. You through your way, me through trying to get the skate park built down here. And then you realize that, so for me, like on one of the things I've noticed is I've been down there working on getting a skate park built in my town for 10 years, 11 years now. Right at the buzzer, all of a sudden, all these like, just don't take offense, but the skate school parasites have showed up. They started showing up at the design meeting going, no, we want this part for us. And I was watching the city manager, and So the other day they were like, we're shutting down the skate park to teach lessons during this week and August. And I was like, wait a minute, like that's not your skate park to shut down for whatever reason. It's because again and I don't mean like the independent dude, these are sort of bigger balls that are moving these organizations that are hiding behind these children, right? Like they're making money when they come down and make the money off it, and they're not. It's very interesting because it's small scale, but it's big scale. Which we were bumping into is these people aren't really building these parks for what I build them for, right? I'm building the skate parks because I view them as basically the town halls of the future, right? And unbeknownst to me, like they've now been moved to be like exploitation sites of the future, where I'm like, wait a minute, like this was supposed to, it sort of goes into that penitentiary skate thing, but like it was supposed to free the children so that they could actually be participants in the civic process versus being like a corral for the corporate managers.
Yeah.
Which concerns me, especially when we dug into that stuff the other day, because I've seen it peripherally with some of these foundations we won't name and their ability to sway influence in the process. And then you really realize like the payola of building skate parks, we don't need to name any of these people, but we deal with them here in Los Angeles County is these skateboarders have figured out ways to pull money out of civic entities. And yet the skateboarders they're taxing are independent contractors. There's something amiss. And I've been on the thing for years with skateboarding about health insurance, right? And we've seen that skateboarding's gone woke in the last couple of years. Like everybody's woke. And yet I pulled the thread on it and go, if you want to be a woke body, why isn't you demanding health insurance for skateboarders number one priority? If you want to talk about the well-being of skateboarders, then the health insurance thing seems to be the main missing component to me a little bit.
Absolutely. The saddest, the tragedy of the whole thing of like talking specifically about becoming a pro, the tragedy that no one really ever talks about, but it happens more often in 90% of the time, in my opinion. I've observed it my whole life. That very few people actually make money skateboarding. Very few people. The majority just get in with this lifestyle and they're connected with someone. They get some free stuff. They maybe make some board sales. They may be able to rent an apartment or rent a room or whatever. But this lifestyle goes on for a while until they sort of fade out into the backgrounds. There's not a lot of stuff that's installed or in place for them to go on and do anything. A lot of the reasons why is because there is no not just no health insurance, but there's no managing like financial dude. Maybe now that's changing, but at least when I was around, like and growing up, and even I think just until probably it's still there. I mean, you have a couple guys that are trying to help these guys manage stuff, but you have guys that were like Tom Penny, that were the gnarliest skateboarders ever, but Tom had real issues, like with drugs, and I had those issues too at some level, but Tom was one of those examples, one of many that didn't get, there's no health insurance, there's no support, there's no mentorship, there's no financial management, there's no one but he's outputting and he's building these companies up and making these companies literally who they are. Like they would not be what they are without these guys, literally. And I think that somehow is glossed over. Like somehow there's a cognitive like paralysis in connecting the skills of a skateboarder and how that translates to board sales for the company and the responsibility the company has to that skater who's actually made them what they are. There's some definitely a major miss there. And I've been talking about this for years about health insurance and about beyond health insurance, just having normal, like well-wishers in your corner who care about you, who are themselves together, who are not in the back of the van smoking weed with you and showing you pornos. And this is the kind of shit that these kids are exposed. Many of them, that's not hyperbole or some sort of like, I'm going on a tangent, but that is what, happens more common than not, that an 8, 10, 12-year-old kid gets in the van and goes on a little mini tour and, he's exposed to, and he's exposed to all these things that he's never been exposed to before. And
well, I think that's sort of where we were hitting on is that I think that the nature of what was an attractive element to skateboarding when we were young, which was freedom and no rules and all that, has definitely been used to insert some pretty dark qualities. They've always been there. I mean, the number one brand of has got a pentagram on it, and that was a struggle for me to get to abandon that brand. Again, not mentioning it because it was so ingrained as the freedom flag of what this was. And then at the same time, what I consider the greatest part of what is the potential is the DIY movement. And yet that really isn't championed by the thing, because in there's something that is beyond my understanding that I've just in awe of constantly is the DIY movement of building your own terrain and the self-funding and all of that stuff. So there's these two opposing worlds these children can go into, and yet there's part of it is if your children are getting involved in skateboarding, there is just this black hole they could go into either way. There is no safe skateboarding route without good parenting, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because back when we were young, there was sort of an innocence to it. It was a lot of weed and, Black Sabbath or whatever, but there was no big predatory machine waiting to gobble us up. It was sort of cul-de-sac-y, if you know what I mean. Now I think the big industries have seen that this is a way to definitely harvest in a weird way, which
visuals are everything in marketing and with corporations. Visuals is everything, like the aesthetics. And skateboarding offers the best of everything for these corporations because it's gritty, it's raw, it's fast, it's wheels, it's movement, it's flips, and it's all the elements of what, as corny as it sounds, is all the elements of what as a marketer or as a brand person would look for in a thing to use. There's no limits.
Well, they learned from the 70s, right? If I sit and think about it, they learned from the mistakes of the 70s, which was a marketing extravaganza in that world.
Sure. Yeah.
But so Jordan, I just want to go, we're going to do it sort of like a hard cutoff for ourselves because we agreed on that we were going to do 1 hour.
Absolutely.
So with that said, everybody, there's an email down below, and just so you know, anyone out there is we are a crowd-funded reality. Anything that's generated in this platform split equally, even though it's coming through my avenue, is so you can donate to the Two Dads Lots of Wheels until the name changes, and just signify that with the PayPal or the Top Chat and whatever, and we'll work on that whole thing as we go down, because you know, there is the logistics of time and energy, and those who have ideas or want us to throw us into some subject matter spaces, you can email us down below. And you know, we're going to be back here next Sunday at 6 o'clock. And for now, 2 dads, lots of wheels, but
I'm excited. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome.
So this is our top trial run. And like I said, is anybody with any suggestions and that kind of stuff, please use the email down below and get a hold of us. And we're going to get some guests on here, and we're going to kind of make this a counterbalance to what we see as the very bland corporate toady skate media world that we watch and we don't get inspired by. It seems very, I'm not even going to use anything but there seems to be something missing, and we're going to try to fill the void as 2 dads with skateboards.
It'd be rad. Yeah, I'm excited. I love it. Well, it's good chatting with you.
I got, so my timekeeper here just came in hot, dude. It's 7 o'clock. We're done.
All good.
All right.
I got my girls too in there. So no, what were you going to say? Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I'll see you next Sunday.
Looking forward to it, brother. Thanks for
All right.
having me.
Good night. God bless.
God bless. Later.